What's up guys, it is Murderink here, back with another Champion Spotlight video for Raid Shadow Legends. Today we're going to be talking about the most recent fusion, which has been Vergoomkar, and as I so eloquently put it, I like calling him the Sausage Frog, simply based on how he looks. I think he's one of the cooler looking champions in the entire game, just because he's so different. And by now, most people already know if they're going to pursue this champion, if they are not going to pursue this champion. So regardless of the reason, here I'm going to give you a video to show you what he is capable if you do plan on using him, or the things that you can run into if you end up fighting a champion like this, kind of what to expect, and once again, what his max potential will be in the proper hands. So in case you don't know what this champion does, he is an A1 that has the chance to place a stun on your target. This chance does increase by 15% for each buff on the target. So the more buffs the enemy does have, the better chance you're going to have of applying this stun, which is going to prove to be very strong with where you can actually use this champion. Now we have an A2 here, which seemed to be the focal point for a lot of people. However, I don't believe this actually is a point worth looking at too much. This is very strong, don't get me wrong. However, there are very specific situations where you would actually need to use this to your advantage. So what it does is it removes all provoke debuffs and one random debuff from all allies. Now, the provoke is really what people look at. However, the more important part is one random debuff from all allies, since provoke is a very specific debuff that you don't see too frequently in the game, and if you wanted to use this in the arena, you would have to specifically plan your opponent to make sure they are applying a provoke debuff. Places a 60% increased defense buff for 2 turns on allies who have debuffs removed, which is definitely very strong. Also places a shield buff on all allies equal to 20% of this champion's max health for 2 turns. Moving on to his A3, he attacks all enemies, removing 1 random buff, has a 75% chance of removing 2 random buffs from each enemy, placing a 100% heal block debuff for 3 turns. On any enemy who has 1 or more buffs removed, also places a 60% defense down debuff for 2 turns on enemies who have 2 buffs removed. Now this is an awesome ability. This is something that I saw right away can be extremely strong, and the fact that he's attack based on top of looking cool, which is kind of a personal preference here, but this is a debuff stripper in every sense. And on top of stripping debuffs, he also penalizes where he's using a block heal decreased defense application to that target, as well as having the ability to cleanse buffs on your team, also giving him that A1 with the stun. So I really like his kit a lot. Now we go to his passive, immune to provoke debuffs, which can definitely be strong, but as mentioned before, this is a very specific skill. Fills the champion's turn meter by 20% each time an enemy attempts to place a provoke debuff on this champion, which is definitely strong, but once again, this is a very specific passive, and it's going to be hard to get general use out of this unless you're using it in very targeted gameplay. Moving on to the aura, increases ally resist in all battles by 55. So overall, unless you really look deep into this kit, it might seem underwhelming. However, once testing it out, I actually found it's rather strong. Let me show you the gear I'm using on him. I'm actually not using anything crazy here. You have 3,400 attack, which is the lowest attack I've ever ran on a champion for a spotlight video. 257% critical damage, which is definitely respectable. 245 accuracy. 198 speed, 100% crit rate, and a decent amount of health and defense as well. As far as masteries go, I elected to give him the Helm Smasher mastery just for that little bit of edge in damage. This is the mastery tree that I used, and the main place I'm going to show you this champion in action is going to be the arena, and you can determine from there where you would want to use him in any type of other content based on the interactions I'm going to show you in the matches ahead. So while I am going to show you Vergoomkar in this champion spotlight, I'm also going to give you a little bit of a spoiler to the next champion spotlight that I'm going to be releasing, which is going to be Ursuga Warcaller. Another nickname I gave her is Ursuga Thickcaller, because as we can see, she has a very large and thick model here. She's a fantastic champion. This is the defense that I'm going to be using, and the offense I'm going to be using. So you're going to get a little sneak peek at this champion. I'm not going to explain her skills too much, but basically she allows me to go second every time without fail. And unfortunately, no one is hitting my defense because they know they are going to get featured in a video, as I've seen many times before in the comments. So if you do want to see yourself, and if you find my team, definitely hit it, and I will go over it in the Ursuga Warcaller Champion Spotlight video, because I'm going to be keeping this defense up. Do your best to try and beat it, and it might be easier once you see some gameplay that I'm about to show you up next. So the first enemy we're going to try here is going to be this team here, and one very strong interaction the Sausage Frog is going to have against other champions is going to be a counterattack. Now, counterattack is definitely very risky against someone like a Madame Ceres who has the ability to strip, but eventually the counterattack is going to be applied, and this gives our Fusion Legendary here the chance to stun every time he is hit, which is going to be extremely strong, and we're going to pretty much see what kind of damage this champion can do, because people said it was very underwhelming at first. So let's watch these guys go first. We do have Valkyrie here, which is going to cleanse and force that A2 ability from Madame Ceres. So as we saw, the first counterattack did go off there, and it did stun with that increased chance to stun based on them having attack up. Now we're going to use the Shroud, and we're mitigating damage very well, and that's definitely because of the new Void Legendary Ursuga. And pretty much what we're seeing here is just your typical counterattacks. We have Trunda there also putting in some work, and once again, 29,000 damage, more than enough to kill a Trunda without a defense down with our Fusion Legendary. Also, once again, stunning this Arbiter. Hopefully you guys realize by now that if you are going for this champion, I know there haven't been a lot of great things said about him. He is very strong, and let's take a look at what his A3 actually can do. Alright, so we did get feared. I kind of got baited. So let's cycle through this. The next ability he's going to use is probably going to be the Cleanse. And let's see what ends up happening here. Yeah, so he's going to use the Cleanse here, put that small shield on. Now his base stats aren't too amazing, so the shield part is going to be rather hard to work with. It can definitely have good synergy with some type of shield set, but the main use I like is consider this champion kind of like a Sethalia. He has the chance to cleanse the entire team of one buff, not including the Provoke, which is the added bonus I mentioned earlier. He has the opportunity to strip buffs. He also does a decent amount of damage. It has the really annoying debuff of placing a stun on an enemy. So really quickly thinking, where can this be strong? Think of champions who apply on-hit buffs that have been so strong in the arena. Champions like Sandlash Survivor. Champions like Seeker, who's very commonly used and also has a Provoke debuff. So now you can throw in someone like this new Fusion Legendary here, and he is a very good counter to these champions. Even though someone like a Seeker is blue affinity, which is going to be a problem for him damage wise, it's still not going to affect the stripping of buffs on their entire team. So now that we went over that battle, let's see how we can do against a Blender team, which is definitely going to go first, and let's see how we do in mitigating this damage going forward. So after we get blended here, we did lose our Fusion champion. I'll keep it on 2x speed until he gets revived. We can actually see what he gets to do. Simply going through the motions here. We have a nice usage of Ursuga's A2. We're not going to talk about her once again. I'm trying to make sure she doesn't steal this spotlight, but she kind of is at the moment. Let's cycle through and make sure our Fusion gets a chance to actually have a turn and get some damage out. I believe he is going to go right after Ursuga, and now Valkyrie since her passive did proc. So hopefully there is enough damage for him to actually get a shot here. Okay. And of course he uses his shield here, so this is going to be uneventful, and he really didn't do anything, to be honest with you. A perfect example of the wrong champion stealing the show in the wrong video, but pretty much something to look forward to. As we just saw there, since she is a blue champion, she's definitely Not ideal for someone like our fusion here to try and tackle and get away with, but still he is going to do a ton of damage. So now let's try fighting a team like this with Void and Spirit Affinity Champion to see how much damage we can do, especially with someone like Umbral who is going to try and AoE provoke everyone just like that, boosting the turn meter. And he is, if I believe his AI, okay, so he's going to cleanse instead of using that A3 first. The only time he is going to do that is if in fact that their team has a provoke debuff on, which is definitely good. They are getting a little bit better with their AI. I did just make a pretty worrisome video on how poorly Fane's AI is, who was part of the fusion. However, they did seem to do a decent job here, and as we can saw there, the only issue I do have with this champion's AI and overall kit is the buffs that are removed from the enemy team are going to be random. So if they have something like an unkillable and 2 other buffs, he can definitely remove the non-unkillable buffs, and not that it makes it useless, but it definitely lowers the value there. So with all of that being said, let's try and tackle a team that is going to be a little bit more difficult to survive through, and we're probably going to lose this champion, but we're going to play it by ear and actually see what happens here. We have the extra turn going on there. He is still alive somehow. Trunda should be going here, and it will be enough to in fact kill our friend the Sausage Frog. Let's see what happens when we do in fact get a turn here. Now all of these fights are going to be long. It is the nature of the team comp I'm running here to showcase this. However, if you can replicate this, you don't need to use the champions I have. Obviously not everyone has Duchess. You can use someone like a Tanix. You can use someone like a Seeker on your own team or a Sandlash Survivor. They all work well together, but a counterattack champion is definitely key here. You can make sure he survives the initial burst. Any chance he has to counterattack with that A1 based on the buffs on the enemy team is going to be a complete nuisance for their team overall. Now that we had a chance to go here, hopefully Warlord didn't use his A3 and our fusion here was dead. I'm not sure, I wasn't paying too close attention, but we will see the first move that was actually going to be used by our... Okay, so we ended up using the A3, which is in fact perfect. Once again, leading to that smart AI where if they don't have a provoke debuff on him, he's going to use the A1 first, put that heal reduction, which is huge against an Arbiter, place that defense down, which is also huge. As we can see, Arbiter did not heal at all, which really puts her at risk here. Now we have the counterattacks going off, and Arbiter should be dead after... Yes, easy hit there, 27,000, really nice damage there. Unfortunately, the counterattack was stripped, and now we just have the A1 that's going to be coming out from this fusion champion to finish off the rest of their team. 47,000 against an HP based champion that is Warlord there. So what we're going to do after this, and to kind of have the basic idea on what this champion does, how he does do pretty decent damage. Now what I could have done is I could have built him full damage, ran him with someone like a Madame Ceres, and we could have seen massive numbers. And just to briefly show you what I'm talking about, I'm going to put in a speed team, use a Madame Ceres here, and hopefully I get to show you how much damage this champion can do with his A3 with the defense down in the same gear that isn't necessarily geared too much towards damage. We do have a healthy amount of accuracy. Alright, so let's see what we can do against our opponent here. We are going to decrease their turn meter. We're going to have Valk decrease their turn meter. We're going to put that defense down on everyone, hopefully. Now let's use this A3 and see what we can do against their team. So 30, 60, and 50,000 damage, which is definitely awesome to see. Now let's scale things forward and watch and see if we get any counterattacks. Probably not. That was enough to finish it off as it was. And this is what I'm talking about. A champion like this, you can put in straight damage gear, use him as a Spirit Affinity damage dealer, which can definitely help out a lot of people, because most people are using either blue or red champions, and with the current tank meta, this will definitely help, because a lot of people are running champions like Razin, or they're running Black Knight. Any type of legendary or epic that is red affinity is very strong, since we have an overwhelming amount of blue affinity or magic affinity champions that are currently running the arena right now as that damage dealing champion. So when you change things up and counter what people are already using to counter the current meta, that's where this fusion really comes in handy here. If you want to use him as that damage dealer, throw on any small amount of accuracy, since most speed teams aren't going to be running accuracy. Now, if you want to use this against tank teams, you have to be careful. If they have high power or they're running a resistance leader, he's going to need a lot more accuracy, and his only real use there is actually going to be damage. So make sure you're reading your opponents like I've gone over in other arena videos before, and make sure you're fully equipped to handle what's going to happen. And now as far as dungeons go, the only real dungeon I could properly test him in would definitely be Fire Knight 20. However, you're definitely not going to be using him in this dungeon, but just so we can see the kind of damage he's going to do here, let's burn this A2 so we don't one-shot this wave. Now we'll use the A3 to kind of see what a defense down and weaken and attack up on this champion looks like. So 88 to 71,000, not in damaging gear. Definitely a significant amount of damage for a champion like this. So I'm not sure where this whole idea of underwhelming damage came from. But if I did put the normal 6,000 attack, 300% crit damage, something along those lines in Savage or Cruel gear, which I can definitely do, this guy would be doing a monstrous amount of damage. However, I elected to use him in the arena. I think it's a much more practical use for this champion and for most people who are going to be watching. And this is definitely going to be a solid addition to your arena team, as we saw 100,000 damage there. And remembering we are running Helm Smasher, which is going to help out a lot. So these are pretty much my thoughts on this team here. While I don't think he is the best fusion to ever come out, I am not disappointed with this champion at all. I think he looks great, especially next to his brother, or however you want to call him, Dracomorph there. He is the true frog out of this team, now that we've established that. So he's a really fun champion to use. He offers a lot to players as far as what you can do in arena. And as mentioned before, that's actually a really cool effect that I didn't notice before, how he kind of douses the target and it makes it look rather sick overall. So this is a cool champion. You can definitely find a use for this champion if you did decide to fuse it. I can't say anything for sure, but based on this champion, I don't think he is in fact weak enough to say he's going to get buffed. I think he has proper use, especially if you think about it. I think he's completely balanced as far as what they need. I don't think they need to buff anything. I don't think they have to nerf anything. And as you've probably noticed from fusions, they are leaning more towards support type champions, because they don't want another mishap where a Brachus comes out or someone like a Rotos who is considered a little bit too strong for a fusion. The only issue they can run into is someone like a support type champion like Lissandra. If you haven't seen, I made a video on Lissandra in full damage gear, and her abilities are hitting for over 200,000 damage if you stack her with pure damage. So there's always that hidden multiplier with low base attack champions who are support champions where you wouldn't expect it, and that's kind of what we see here from this fusion. If you wanted to stack him in full damage gear, he would be doing well over 100,000 damage, probably closer to 200,000 damage with full damage gear. So they definitely have to be careful and make sure they're testing these things properly when releasing anything new, as we are coming up on another fusion right around the corner. So the pretty much response to any new champion that comes out with the utility base kit is definitely going to have some use in Faction Wars. If you are still progressing through there, he's going to help you there without a doubt. But the main point I wanted to get across in this video is he does a lot of damage, and he's going to be an incredible tool in the arena as a, I don't want to say 5th champion, because the goal is to have more than 5 champions once you do hit endgame. But this is going to be an awesome champion to add to your arena arsenal, and making sure you have the tools to defeat any team you're put up against, and making sure you have the highest success rate possible when trying to farm medals for that Great Hall. Let me know what you guys think about this fusion. I know a lot of people got this impression that he was extremely underwhelming. Hopefully this was a fresh take on it, and it made you realize that there's a lot more to his kit and a lot more potential than most people are thinking of. Very strong in a counterattack, as I said before. I highly recommend, if you are going after this champion, don't just say I'm only going to use him for Faction Wars. Try to find those teams in the arena that you can counter very easily. Throw him in the roster, and I guarantee you he's going to be doing a lot of great things for you and the rest of your arena experience. So don't forget, leave your feedback. I'm going to be reading it. I'm very interested in what people think about this champion outside of how cool he actually looks, because let's be honest, this is definitely one of the coolest models that have been released in the game so far. It's not as flashy as other champions, but I think they did an excellent job with this champion and his animations. Alright guys, as always, thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you're notified when I do release these YouTube videos. I do look forward to my next Champion Spotlight video on Ursuga Warcaller, which is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be releasing 2 videos, one video kind of giving you the breakdown on her kit, and another video showing you how she's like in the clan boss. Now, clan boss isn't something I went over with this fusion, because I don't think he has a proper role in it, so I didn't bother testing it out there. So I look forward to seeing you all in that next Champion Spotlight video.